Hey look everyone, it's Mega Man Worker Force. Why is Mega Man wearing a sleeveful green suit? Shouldn't it be blue? God damn, this game fucking sucks. Minus 66 out of 10. Derp. Yeah, that's how we start the morning here on the channel. Anyways, failed snark aside, if you want to call it that. I certainly don't. I don't know what that is, but we're keeping it in because I honestly don't care. What we have here is Vintage Hero, a cheapo release from Frog the Door Games. Yes, Frog the Door Games. I don't know, that sounded funnier in my head. Anyways, Vintage Hero is based on the gameplay stylings of everyone's favorite Blue Bomber. Because if Capcom isn't going to make a new Mega Man game, then I guess everyone else will make a new Mega Man game. This whole Mega Man knockoff bit is ridiculous. Sooner or later, I might as well jump on that bandwagon and make my own Mega Man knockoff. Probably call it Mighty Dog, original character, do not stick. Actually, never mind, that'd be a bad idea. Moving on. Vintage Hero puts you in the role of Floyd, an unassuming custodian of a county jail somewhere, who is charged with the task of fending off an invading alien force because the world's usual hero, Giga Man, is too busy with the nightlife or something to that extent. Therefore, it's up to Floyd to save the day using his blaster thing, his springboard thing, and his ability to acquire weapons from the boss monsters he beats. Does that not seem all familiar to you at all? Okay, so let's get the core bits out of the way. If you've played a Mega Man game of the classic Persuasion, and there's a ton of them out there, then you already know the core basics of how Vintage Hero works. You pick one of 4 levels to play through, you play through them, you kill the bad guys, you collect power-ups, you score experience points, we'll get back to that by the way, and eventually confront and defeat the boss to score their incredibly useful master weapon thing. Much like the game that inspired it, Vintage Hero has that rock, paper, scissors thing going for it, where one weapon is more effective against the other, and there's this whole cycle for you to figure out, though it's pretty easy to figure out, you only have 4 weapons to cycle through. Once the initial 4 bosses are killed, you move on to the final levels of the game where the plot thickens, so to speak, if you care for the plot, which I never really did, but you can't skip the cutscenes, which is sad, but anyways. Vintage Hero features experience points that you gain by killing enemies or collecting point capsules that you could later spend on upgrades such as longer life and weapon meters and higher attack and defense power. It's a nice little mechanic that works halfway, I suppose. Useful for earning yourself much longer meters because you'll probably need it later on, but otherwise, the extra experience doesn't help make my hero feel any stronger, but it's also entirely possible I haven't paid much attention to it because, well, it's not something I pay attention to here. My concern in this type of game is making it through the challenge in one piece. This is pretty much old school Mega Man, no slides, no buster charge, no armor pickups, none of that stuff. You do have tank pickups here and there, but that's about it. You just run, jump, shoot, and try not to get killed by the hazards before you. And you know what? It works. Vintage Hero plays about as well as a classic Mega Man game would, which is something I suppose is less impressive nowadays considering the slew of Mega mockeries out there, but this one basic trait is the bare minimum and this accomplishes that rather nicely, I suppose. Control works well enough, you have the basic functions which are responsive, a proper weapon select menu that works like that other game, and you can even use the triggers to quickly cycle through weapons for easy access. You also have 3 save slots to record your progress, as well as other options like button configurations and other minor bits and bobs, which is a nice consideration. That having been said, Vintage Hero is a rather short game. There's only 6 stages of play, and while the game does offer 3 difficulty settings for you to play with, it almost feels like a last-ditch effort to try and expand on the rather limited replay value. To be quite honest though, one playthrough on normal was more than enough for me, and it seemed a bit on the easy side to a degree that despite a couple mess-ups here and there, I was able to beat the game fairly quickly. More or less an hour of playtime, but chances are you could probably beat this quicker if you're willing to give it the time of day to memorize the paths and the patterns and all that stuff. Those who want more of a challenge can try hard mode and its 1 life starting point, but otherwise the normal mode will suffice, or you could go with easy, which tosses in infinite lives your way if you're having trouble. On a whole, however, if you're familiar with Mega Man, Vintage Hero shouldn't take that long to complete. On the bright side, it plays well enough, and there's a couple neat little gimmicks here like the experience point system, which doesn't add much, but it is something. But on the other hand, it's more of an appetizer that leaves you wanting more than a main course that fully satisfies from start to finish. Vintage Hero looks like a low-budget Mega Man knockoff, and considering the $2 price tag, it pretty much fits that bill nicely. This isn't a spectacular looking game, somewhere akin to a cross between 8-bit simple designs and 16-bit color and effect stylings. Chances are even that's a bit of a generous descriptor, but nonetheless, most of the levels take place indoors and have a tendency to start looking a bit samey for better or worse. Also, some of the character sprites are a bit on the underwhelming side, to put it kindly, especially the larger boss characters, which look like something that was drawn quickly in Microsoft Paint and then splashed some color just to say there's color. However, it's not a completely ugly game. Some of the set pieces are well drawn and looks like something you could put on an NES or a Master System console, only with more colors than those systems would be capable of. And animation is of decent quality with very little choppiness or slowdown or anything like that. Look, at the end of the day, it's only a couple bucks. I shouldn't rag too much, but at the same time, I just say what comes to mind and that what comes to mind. What also comes to mind is I wish I could skip the cutscenes so I don't have to sit through them every time I play. Maybe there is a way and I'm just missing something, but nonetheless, whatever. On the upside, I actually liked some of the tunes in this game. Sure, they all have the stench of the generic 8-bit NES-style MIDI hybrid sounding sound and stuff, and some of the other tunes in the game are just bland beyond bland, but there are some nice tunes in here that stuck in my head after a while. Not a long while, but just that while. Sound effects, on the other hand, are also kind of bland, not all that interesting, meh. Hey, there's at least a couple of good tunes in there, I guess, but look, I'm trying to be a little more uplifting, a little more positive, and I gotta take what I can get, so what can I say? I enjoyed a couple of the tunes, but that's about it. Overall, Vintage Hero is a serviceable Mega mock-off that works rather well. For a $2 game, you definitely get what you pay for. A somewhat bare-bones Mega experience that's way too short and teases some neat ideas without developing them into a much more fulfilling experience, but it's adequate in that regard, and really that's the only point worth mentioning that sums up the whole deal. Vintage Hero is no second coming of Mega Man, nor does it intend to be, which is a good thing in my opinion. But as far as games of this ilk is concerned, I've played much worse, and while Vintage Hero might not be greatness personified, it's rather harmless fun for a short while at least. So if you're into classic Mega Man or classic Mega Man-like games and you want a nice little game for a lark that's really cheap, then Vintage Hero might be worth looking into. However, those looking for a more fulfilling, more polished, and possibly more complete Mega experience have plenty of better options that might be worth their time. What we have here in Vintage Hero is a nice little sampler, but that's really all you're getting, and whether that's a good thing or not is entirely up to you.